This is our second video on transformations of graphs, and we're going to look at reflections. So let's start with vertical reflections. Alright, so let's draw a graph. And let's make it a parabola again, maybe not symmetric. How about the y-axis this time? X. Alright, so if we want to reflect this function vertically, we actually reflect it about the horizontal axis. And that can be a little confusing. A vertical reflection is about the horizontal axis. But the actual procedure is pretty simple. You just look at an input, right, and then find what the output would be, and then just take the negative of that. That becomes your new output. Now you look at an input and find what the output would be and take the negative of that, and it becomes your new output. So what you end up getting, if I can draw this well, is just your graph reflected vertically. And how did we achieve this? What is the symbolic form? Well, it's exactly what I just said. It's f of x. You take your input, you find your output, and then you take the negative of that. So that's how you find a vertical reflection. Alright, so horizontal reflections are somewhat similar, as you might have guessed. And we'll start with a graph again. Alright, and let's make it a parabola. So for a horizontal reflection, it's a little different. So what you would do is you would take your input and you'd find your output. Alright, so right there. And now what you do, instead of taking the negative of your output, you take the negative of your input and match it to that output. So we take an input here, find the output there, and then we take the negative of that input and match it with the output. So what we get is this left-hand side of our parabola is reflected over here. Alright, and then I'll switch colors. Well, maybe I'll stay with the same color. So if I look at an input over here and I find the corresponding output, then I take the negative of that input and I get a graph that looks somewhat like this. Alright, and so what's the form of this function? Well, it's exactly what I said, right? You still take the normal output, but you take the negative of the input. So a horizontal reflection is f of negative x. So let's compare these really quick, these two different forms, right? Now, just like with a shift, for a vertical reflection, you're transforming the graph after you find the output. And for a horizontal reflection, you transform the graph with the input instead of with the output. And that's something that's going to come up again and again. Anytime you do a horizontal transformation, you change the input. And every time you do a vertical transformation, you change the output.